Imagine you are walking through a highly secure military facility.
Right.
You are checking the certification logs, and you notice an anomaly. You dig a little deeper, and the cold reality sets in. Your best friend, a nuclear weapons specialist, is cheating on their certification exams.
Wow.
These are the exact exams designed to ensure they can safely handle weapons of mass destruction. If you report them, their career is over.
Dish.
But if you do not, you are knowingly allowing an uncertified individual to interface with the global nuclear arsenal. Now, imagine your immediate supervisor pulls you aside and tells you to ignore it.
Yeah.
They tell you to sweep it under the rug. What do you do?
It's the ultimate nightmare scenario, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, it is a direct collision of personal loyalty, immediate authority, and just catastrophic global risk.
Exactly.
And what is fascinating is that the military does not leave your reaction to chance here. They do not rely on your personal moral compass or your intuition, because when the stakes involve national security, intuition is a massive liability.
Welcome to today's deep dive. We are opening up the Blue Suit files just this once to decode a very specific, highly engineered document.
Chapter 15 of the Air Force Handbook 1.
Right, titled Developing Self. And we are analyzing this text alongside a structural matrix known as the Airman Development and Testing Chart, or the ADTC.
The ADTC is the key to all of this.
It really is. For you listening right now, the mission today is incredibly direct. This material is explicitly designed for military promotion. Specifically, it targets the technical sergeant level.
TSGT level, yeah.
But the principle is codified here regarding accountability, psychological resilience, precise communication. These are the ultimate blueprints for ruthless effectiveness in any civilian enterprise.
Absolutely.
We're going to see exactly how a monolithic organization builds a leader's psychology from the absolute ground up.
Look, to truly grasp the gravity of this source material, we first have to understand the architectural framework that dictates how this knowledge is processed. I mean, the Air Force Handbook is a massive repository of doctrine.
It's huge.
But the doctrine itself is useless without an execution matrix.
Well,
that is exactly what the ADTC provides. It is a schematic.
so it's not just a reading list.
No, not at all. It tells an airman exactly how deeply they must comprehend every single section of the handbook.
So they do not just hand you a book and say, memorize this. They tell you the exact cognitive depth required for each specific topic.
Precisely. The ADTC breaks cognitive comprehension into 4 distinct levels. Level A is remembering.
Just rote memorization.
Right. This is basic fact retrieval.
Right.
Recognizing knowledge, recalling definitions, memorizing lists of aircraft or historical dates. It is the lowest level of cognitive load. You are simply a hard drive storing data.
Okay, so level A is basic storage. What is level B?
Level B is understanding. This involves actively constructing meaning. It requires an individual to interpret, classify, summarize, and explain concepts. So you move from just storing data to actually explaining how that data works.
So level A is knowing a rule exists, and level B is being able to explain why the rule exists.
Exactly. Then we step across a really critical threshold to level C.
Which is applying.
Right, applying. This mandates the actual carrying out of a procedure. You are no longer just explaining a concept. You are executing it in a real-world situation.
You are producing models or delivering presentations or operating within live simulations?
Yes. And finally, level D is analyzing. This is the highest cognitive tier, where one breaks complex materials into subcomponents and determines how those parts interrelate to serve the overall structure.
Now, when we cross-reference Chapter 15 with the ADTC specifically for a technical sergeant, a very deliberate pattern emerges.
A fascinating pattern, actually.
The sections covering accountability, military communication, preparing to communicate, written communication, and spoken communication, they are all designated as Level B requirements.
Level B.
Like the Air Force expects the technical sergeant to understand and summarize these concepts. But Section 15F, electronic messaging, is designated as a Level C requirement.
That demands real-world application.
Right. And in the civilian world, we often conflate understanding a concept with applying it. We treat them as functional equivalents. Why does this military framework draw such an absolute rigid boundary between level B and level C?
Well, the distinction is entirely about the threshold of consequence. Level B understanding is internal and theoretical.
You can test it on paper.
Exactly. You could explain the theory of a fixed versus growth mindset perfectly in a classroom. You can describe the components of an effective military briefing on a written test. But level C, applying, is external. It is irreversible, and it carries immediate operational weight.
It is the clinical difference between knowing how a parachute works and actually packing one.
That is the perfect analogy. When a technical sergeant sends an electronic message, they're interfacing directly with Global Department of Defense networks.
The stakes are incredibly high.
They are. Applying requires execution under operational pressure. Knowing why a digital security regulation exists is just level B. Perfectly executing the digital security protocols while fatigued under a tight deadline without a single operational security violation, that is level C.
Because the system recognizes that theoretical knowledge is completely useless if the execution protocol fails in the real world.
Right. The system logic dictates that execution is the ultimate metric. But, before an airman can execute outward external communication, the doctrine dictates they must secure their internal architecture.
You cannot lead a unit if your own mind is chaotic.
No, you can't. Which brings us to Section 15A, accountability and self-management.
The text defines accountability fundamentally as demonstrating reliability and honesty, and taking responsibility for the behaviors of oneself and the team.
It is consistently rated in Air Force surveys as the most important foundational competency for a career.
I mean, the definition itself sounds standard, right? Almost corporate.
It does. But the text immediately grounds it in severe high-stakes scenarios. It forces the reader to confront the clinical consequences of a failure in accountability.
Which is where we return to that opening scenario. The nuclear weapons specialist cheating on exams.
Right. The text forces the airman to process this not as a philosophical debate, but as an operational crisis. Do you report your friend?
And what if your supervisor explicitly tells you to ignore the issue because it will make the unit look bad?
The manual actually provides a second scenario that is equally heavy.
The MTI scenario.
Yes. Imagine you are a military training instructor, an MTI. You witness a peer pushing trainees far beyond authorized limits.
They are yelling obscenities, forcing unauthorized training hours.
Physically exhausting recruits to a highly dangerous degree. But the immediate leadership is pressuring this peer to meet incredibly aggressive training goals.
Leadership wants results, and your peer is getting them, albeit through abuse. So will you intervene?
Look, these are not abstract ethical dilemmas discussed in some university ethics class. These are real, documented operational crises that happen within the ranks.
And the text breaks down the required response into 3 specific psychological components that an airman must master to handle these situations: significance, self-efficacy, and autonomy.
Let us unpack significance first, because when you are looking at a friend who is cheating, the immediate human instinct is to minimize it,
Right, you tell yourself it is just one test, they know the material anyway, it is not a big deal.
But significance is the military's algorithmic mechanism to defeat that exact rationalization. It asks the individual to extrapolate their specific localized action or inaction across the entire enterprise.
It is a brilliant psychological tool.
It forces the airman to ask, what happens if every single MTI physically abused their trainees to meet quotas?
You would literally break the next generation of the Air Force.
Exactly. What happens if every nuclear weapons specialist lacked the actual expertise to execute emergency procedures, all because they cheated on their certifications?
You would have a compromised nuclear arsenal.
Precisely. The consequence of a localized individual failure, when scaled up, results in systemic, catastrophic collapse.
By forcing the airmen to view their single decision through the lens of enterprise-wide significance, that rationalization that it does not matter completely disintegrates.
Think about the civilian equivalent. It is the bystander effect.
Oh, absolutely. In a corporate environment, the bystander effect leads to a toxic workplace culture or a slow slide into financial malfeasance.
Right, because people assume human resources will handle it, or that upper management knows what they are doing.
But in the military environment, the stakes are physical injury or compromised national defense. You simply cannot afford a bystander effect.
Which makes the second component, self-efficacy, incredibly critical.
So define self-efficacy in this context.
Self-efficacy is the belief in your own ability to intervene effectively based on your specific skill set.
So it is not just blind confidence.
No, blind confidence is dangerous. Self-efficacy is tactical self-awareness. The doctrine instructs the airman to utilize specific, practiced skills like active listening, reflection, and recognizing nonverbal cues.
So in the nuclear cheating scenario, it is not just about aggressively confronting the person and kicking down the commander's door.
Right, because blunt force is rarely the most effective intervention.
It usually just makes things worse.
Exactly. Instead of simply turning the nuclear specialist in immediately and destroying their life, the text suggests utilizing unique strengths based on self-efficacy.
Perhaps the intervention starts by teaching the friend better study techniques.
Yes. Or perhaps you coach the abusive MTI on emotional regulation and stress management. Self-efficacy is the translation of a moral objection into a strategic, calculated intervention that actually solves the root problem.
But what if that fails? I mean, what if the supervisor tells you to back off?
That brings us to the final component of this triad autonomy.
The text states, ultimately, you are your own person. You make your own decisions on your actions or inactions. It explicitly addresses the pressure from peers or so-called leaders.
This is a radical concept within a hierarchical military structure,
Yeah.
We think of the military as an environment of absolute obedience.
Total compliance.
Right. But autonomy in this context is not a philosophical state of free will. It is a structural requirement for the chain of command to function safely.
You must possess the psychological independence to defy local pressure to preserve the integrity of the broader system.
Exactly. If a localized commander is issuing an unlawful order or endorsing a severe safety violation, blind obedience becomes a critical threat to the enterprise.
Autonomy is the fail-safe mechanism engineered into the individual airman.
It really is. That is an incredible paradox. They train you to follow orders flawlessly, but they also program a psychological tripwire that demands you disobey if the system is threatened from within.
That level of moral courage requires a massive amount of internal resilience.
Which brings us directly to the operational reality of sustained effort. The doctrine transitions seamlessly from accountability into perseverance.
Specifically examining the psychology of ability.
Right. The Air Force utilizes the established psychological models of the fixed mindset versus the growth mindset.
Let's break those down. A fixed mindset operates on the assumption that intelligence and personal qualities are completely static.
It is the belief that you are simply born with a certain amount of talent, leadership ability, or intelligence, and that cannot be changed.
If you have a fixed mindset, you view your initial failure at a task as permanent, empirical evidence of your lack of ability. You avoid exertion because having to try hard proves you lack natural talent.
And in a military environment, a fixed mindset is a terminal disease for a leader.
Because a fixed mindset is hypersensitive to negative feedback.
Exactly. Defensiveness becomes the default reaction to any critique. If a system relies on after-action reports and brutal debriefings to improve tactics, a leader who becomes defensive when criticized will actively hide their mistakes.
They will blame their subordinates. They will compromise the mission to protect their own ego.
Conversely, the growth mindset believes personal qualities can be fundamentally altered through deliberate effort.
Challenges are actively sought out. Past mistakes do not define future capability. They are simply data points used to adjust the next attempt.
The manual actually provides a clinical prescription for someone suffering from a fixed mindset. It treats it like a virus that can be cured with a specific behavioral regimen.
That's fascinating. What is the regimen?
It instructs the airmen to remind themselves of the differences between the two mindsets daily. They must ask themselves every single morning, what are the opportunities for learning and growth today?
So it's highly structured.
Very. They must form a plan, act on it, anticipate inevitable setbacks, and when they succeed, immediately ask, what do I have to do to maintain and continue the growth?
It is a continuous, relentless feedback loop of self-improvement. But let us be honest about the clinical reality of the growth mindset. It sounds inspiring, but it requires immense sustained energy.
Oh, absolutely. Waking up every day and leaning into discomfort is exhausting.
The Air Force deeply understands that. They know human willpower is not infinite, which introduces the next critical section, self-control.
The text provides a fascinating, deeply physiological definition of willpower. It states that self-control is fundamentally limited and depletes with heavy use.
Operating exactly like a physical muscle.
Right. This is the psychological concept of ego depletion. If you spend all day at work suppressing your emotional reactions, biting your tongue, and forcing yourself to focus on tedious tasks, you have mathematically less capacity to resist temptation when you get home.
Your willpower muscle is simply fatigued.
To illustrate this, the text uses an incredibly relatable non-military analogy, the potato chip scenario.
I love this part because it strips away all the bureaucratic jargon. Let's walk through it.
It states that it requires a very minimal expenditure of self-control to simply avoid walking down the snack aisle at the grocery store.
You make one brief, low-energy decision to steer your cart away.
Exactly. However, it requires a massive, completely unsustainable expenditure of self-control to resist eating an open bag of chips sitting directly in front of you on your kitchen counter for hours.
You are forcing your brain to make the decision to not eat thousands of times a minute.
Eventually, the muscle fails. It is a biological certainty.
The military applies this exact logic directly to anger management and inappropriate behavior in high-stress environments.
Right. Expending massive internal effort to suppress anger while remaining in a triggering environment is mathematically likely to fail.
The doctrine's strategic solution is not try harder. It is to alter the environment. Remove yourself from the physical situation that causes the anger.
Environmental manipulation is a far more efficient use of energy than internal emotional suppression.
But the text also claims this self-control muscle can be actively strengthened through resistance training.
Yes. It cites studies demonstrating that just 2 weeks of deliberate daily practice inhibiting a minor urge can measurably improve overall generalized impulse control.
So you do not have to practice resisting major things to get better at self-control.
Exactly. The manual suggests setting a small, arbitrary target goal like avoiding sweets, or even holding a hand grip for as long as possible despite physical discomfort.
And keeping a daily record of the effort exerted.
The physiological finding is that strengthening self-control in one highly specific domain bleeds over, improving self-control in completely unrelated domains.
By practicing holding a hand grip through the pain, you are literally rewiring the neural pathways that allow you to resist the urge to curse at a subordinate when you are agitated.
They are using biology to hack psychology. And this physiological approach seamlessly integrates into the doctrine's strategy for resilience.
Because we all face stress, but the Air Force specifically focuses on a cognitive strategy called positive reappraisal.
Right. This is the process of reinterpreting stressful events as non-threatening, meaningful, and contributing to personal growth.
And again, they do not just offer this as motivational advice, they rely on biological metrics to prove the concept.
The text details a highly specific scenario. You receive a last-minute notice that you must deliver a complex presentation to an audience of high-ranking military members.
The stakes are immense. The career consequences of failure are severe.
Think about the last time you were terrified before a big presentation. Your heart was pounding, your palms were sweating, your mind was racing.
If you frame this high-stakes situation internally as a threat, if your internal monologue focuses on the extreme difficulty of the task, the potential for public humiliation, and the harsh evaluation of the generals in the room, your body reacts clinically to that threat narrative.
Your heart rate accelerates, your pulse spikes, your blood pressure rises significantly.
And your physical and mental recovery time post-event is severely prolonged. You are inducing a trauma response.
But the text argues that if you utilize cognitive reappraisal to frame the exact same physical scenario as a challenge, the physiological response fundamentally alters.
You tell yourself, this is a highly difficult task, but it is a challenge that can be met. I have overcome past challenges. I will try my best and learn from the outcome.
The external environment has not changed. The generals are still there. The stakes are identical.
But the text notes that when the event is framed as a challenge, the individual experiences significantly less debilitating anxiety.
Their heart rate, pulse, and blood pressure elevate slightly for performance focus, but they return to baseline much faster.
Wait, I have to ask, is the Air Force actually demanding that its personnel engage in delusional thinking? Are they instructed to simply pretend that terrifying or catastrophic events are actually positive?
It sounds like toxic positivity on a military scale, right?
It really does.
But the text anticipates that exact critique and explicitly denies that this is wishful denial of reality. It is not about pretending a bad thing is a good thing.
So what is it?
It is about the active extraction of operational meaning from adversity. The manual provides several extreme examples to illustrate this mechanism.
Like a heart attack.
Right. A heart attack is not a good thing. But through positive reappraisal, it is processed as a critical wake-up call to permanently modify diet and lifestyle.
Or a spouse's serious illness. It is devastating, but it is reappraised as an unavoidable opportunity to deepen intimacy and test the strength of the relationship.
It even discusses the trauma of being abused. It suggests that a victim can reappraise the trauma as empirical, undeniable evidence of their own profound strength and survival capability,
eventually pivoting that experience into a life dedicated to helping others recover.
On a more routine, daily level, it applies this to workplace dynamics. Dealing with a toxic, rude, or incompetent supervisor is infuriating.
But the text suggests reappraising that daily misery as a masterclass in leadership.
Exactly. It teaches you exactly what supervisory behaviors you must actively avoid when you eventually lead your own subordinates. You extract data from their failure.
The internal architecture of the Airman is entirely constructed around extracting operational value from failure, fatigue, and stress. It is a closed-loop system of psychological efficiency.
And once this internal architecture is fully secured, the doctrine pivots sharply. The airman is now psychologically prepared to face outward.
We move from internal management to Section 15B, military communication, specifically strategic communication and the enterprise perspective.
Because now that you control your mind, how do you project the military's mind to the world?
The Department of Defense defines strategic communication as the purposeful use of communication to advance national interests and objectives.
Through the synchronized integration of information with other elements of national power.
It is about perfectly aligning actions, words, and images to obtain a specific measurable objective.
The public affairs representative, operating under Regulation AFI 35101, serves as the commander's principal spokesperson and advisor.
They evaluate how every command decision will be perceived by both foreign and domestic audiences.
This level of synchronization requires an environment of absolute truth. The doctrine states, truth is the foundation of all public communications, both in terms of credibility and capability.
Dissemination of information must be timely and agile.
If the precise information is not delivered at the exact right time, at the appropriate level, and in the correct manner, its strategic value instantly evaporates.
A delayed truth can be as damaging as a lie in an information war.
Furthermore, the Air Force actively wants every single airman to serve as a decentralized spokesperson.
To tell their USAF story to their communities, adding authentic grassroots credibility to the massive national strategic communication effort.
Yet this mandate to communicate constantly and authentically is immediately counterbalanced by the clinical reality of social media.
The text establishes rigid, unforgiving guardrails. Airmen are personally responsible for everything they post, say, or share online.
Offensive communication is strictly prohibited.
Furthermore, commentary on blogs or social platforms that reasonably degrades morale, good order, and discipline, or discredits the service, is forbidden.
And the doctrine introduces a specific, highly consequential detail that bridges the digital world and the physical world.
The friends list vulnerability.
Right. It notes that your social network friends and followers potentially constitute relationships that can directly impact your background investigations and periodic reinvestigations associated with security clearances.
Wait, so if I accept a friend request from someone with extremist views or suspicious foreign ties, even if I never interact with them, the military views that as a physical security risk?
Absolutely. Your digital associations are evaluated as a map of your vulnerabilities.
There is a massive paradox here in the text. The military demands that every airman be a vocal, authentic communicator of the Air Force narrative to the public,
But simultaneously places them under a microscope regarding operation security, or OPSET.
Classified and controlled unclassified information cannot be posted on social networking services or transmitted via non-DoD email accounts.
So how does a 22-year-old airman balance the mandate to be a global spokesperson with the mandate to maintain absolute operational secrecy without paralyzing themselves with anxiety?
The resolution to that paradox is rigorous standardization.
Yes. The military mitigates the inherent risk of human miscommunication by forcing all communication into highly rigid, universally understood frameworks.
The most fundamental baseline example provided in the text is the military phonetic alphabet.
It was adopted by the U.S. Armed Forces in 1956 and is utilized globally by NATO and civil aviation.
We all know the words Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, Echo, Foxtrot, all the way to Zulu. But why does the military insist on this instead of just speaking clearly?
Because clarity is subjective, but standardization is objective.
The phonetic alphabet is a linguistic algorithm designed to completely eliminate auditory ambiguity.
Regardless of the speaker's accent, the degradation of the radio transmission, or the chaotic physical environment in which the message is sent.
If an artillery coordinate contains the letter B and it is misheard as D over static, the operational consequence is catastrophic.
Bravo and Delta cannot be confused. It removes the vulnerability of human phonetic interpretation.
This standardization scales up from basic letters into the broader concept of organizational communication.
The doctrine cites Caldwell, Stroud, and Menning, stating that an effective organizational culture must be proactive, innovative, adaptive, leader-driven, and sustainable.
Proactive means anticipating the narrative and seizing the initiative.
Innovative requires deeply understanding the capabilities of rapid information sharing.
Adaptive means thriving in an instantaneous, interconnected environment and without rigid inflexibility.
Leader-driven implies commanders must make themselves highly visible and available, especially during crises.
Sustainable means dedicating the actual financial manpower and resources to maintain this culture of engagement.
Which transitions us directly into how this communication is meticulously constructed before it is ever released.
We move into Section 15C, preparing to communicate, and Section 15D, written communication. Here, the doctrine leaves absolutely zero room for artistic interpretation.
It introduces the FOCOS principles. Every single piece of communication must be focused, organized, clear, understanding, and supported.
Let us break those down. Focused means addressing the issue, the whole issue, and nothing but the issue. No tangents.
Organized demands a logical, systematic presentation of facts.
Clarity requires precise pronunciation, flawless grammar, and getting directly to the point without bureaucratic meandering.
Understanding requires the sender to deeply comprehend the audience's knowledge level, their biases, their views, and their expectations regarding format and length.
And supported means substantiating your position with empirical, verifiable data.
The doctrine explicitly warns that relying on implied data or utilizing a distorted logical argument will instantly cripple the credibility of the entire message, and by extension, the author's career.
The actual mechanical drafting process is dictated by the 7 steps for effective communication.
Step 1. Analyze purpose and audience. Are you directing an action, informing a decision, persuading a skeptic, or inspiring a unit?
Step 2. Research your topic. Identify precisely what you know and, more importantly, what you do not know.
Step 3. Support your ideas with accurate, precise, and highly relevant evidence.
Step 4. Organize and outline, choosing either a chronological or sequential pattern based strictly on the end goal.
Step 5. Draft. The text explicitly states the initial draft will not be perfect, but it must establish the introduction, body, and conclusion framework.
Step 6. Edit. Reviewing the big picture flow, then the paragraph structure, and finally, the granular grammar.
But it is step 7 that is the most psychologically critical and the most difficult for high performers to execute. Fight for feedback and get approval.
Fight for feedback. That phrasing is intense.
It is deliberate. The doctrine states, allow your pride in authorship to be set aside. You must seek out brutal critique.
You must explicitly tell your reviewers your perceived strengths and weaknesses, why you selected them specifically to review it, and exactly where you need them to focus their attack on your logic.
It completely removes the ego from the writing process. In the military, the document is a weaponized tool, not a personal reflection of the author's creative worth.
Defending a poorly written document because your ego is attached to it is an operational failure.
This precise, egoless methodology is applied to job interview preparation as well. The text treats an interview not as a conversation, but as an intelligence-gathering operation.
You must study the position description to map your specific skills directly to their stated requirements.
You must research the hiring organization's mission, history, senior leadership, and vision statements. The interview begins the precise moment you enter the property.
You must mathematically prepare for specific questions. Why should I hire you? How will this operational change affect your family? What are your biggest challenges?
The doctrine even instructs the applicant to formulate specific walkaway points to deliver at the absolute close of the interview.
To ensure the final impression is calculated and strategically implanted in the interviewer's mind.
This same rigorous mathematical calculation applies to internal meetings. In the civilian world, we suffer through pointless meetings constantly.
But the military doctrine mandates that before a meeting is even called, the sender must determine if an email or a secure phone call would be more efficient.
If a face-to-face meeting is actually required for complex problem-solving or crosstalk, it must have a rigidly defined purpose, a precise and limited attendee list, an agenda sent well in advance, and a designated plan for capturing minutes.
Meetings are not social gatherings or brainstorming free-for-alls. They are highly structured, expensive data exchange events.
And when that data exchange must be codified into a permanent record, the Air Force utilizes specific, heavily regulated writing platforms.
Section 15D outlines the official memorandum, which is used for conducting official business across the Department of Defense and federal agencies.
It also covers the personal letter, utilized for praise or condolences, restricted strictly to a single page, and completely devoid of military acronyms to preserve humanity.
But the true operational mechanics of the Air Force are handled through a very specific taxonomy of Air Force papers.
The Air Force basically has a highly specialized document for every possible level of human attention span. Let us walk through the progression.
The foundation is the point paper.
It is a single-page document utilizing short bullets and minimal data. Its sole function is as a memory jogger for extemporaneous, no-notice situations.
If a commander stops you in the hallway and asks for an update, you reference the point paper?
So the point paper is the index card you keep in your pocket to make sure you do not freeze.
Exactly. Then we have the talking paper. It is also a single page of bullets, but it provides deeper key reference data.
It serves as a structured outline for planned oral presentations, allowing the speaker to reference key facts rapidly or anticipate frequently asked questions.
It is the cheat sheet a CEO uses when stepping to the podium for a planned address.
Then we scale up in complexity when a single page is no longer sufficient. The bullet background paper can be multiple pages.
Utilizing bullet statements to provide a concise, readable chronology of a complex program, policy, or problem.
But when a problem becomes truly complex, bullet points become dangerous because they strip away critical nuance. This is where the background paper is deployed.
It completely abandons bullets for full, grammatically complete sentences and numbered paragraphs.
It is a multi-page document designed to condense and summarize complex issues to inform senior decision-makers with exhaustive, nuanced detail.
Next is the position paper. Structurally, it looks identical to the background paper multi-page, full sentences, numbered paragraphs. But its function is fundamentally different.
It is not just neutrally informing, it is actively advocating. It is used to circulate proposals, evaluate competing options, and advocate a specific argued position to leadership.
Finally, we reach the apex of written complexity, the staff study.
This is a massive multi-page research paper encompassing detailed discussion, empirical conclusions, and actionable recommendations.
It analyzes a systemic problem, draws data-backed conclusions, and initiates enterprise-wide change. It is the military equivalent of a comprehensive McKinsey consulting report.
And all of these documents do not just float around via email. They are routed through the organizational hierarchy using the staff package.
Yes, the cover page of which is the AF Form 1768, universally known as the Staff Summary Sheet, the SSS or the Triple S.
This single sheet of paper condenses the entire purpose, background, discussion, views of others, and recommendations of the attached package.
Requiring physical or digital signature blocks as it moves sequentially up the chain of command. The Triple S is the ultimate mechanism of accountability. Your signature proves you endorsed the logic within.
So you have engineered your internal psychology. You have mastered the exact format of the written word. We now move to Section 15E, spoken communication.
Because eventually you spent 3 days drafting the perfect staff study to convince a general, but paper does not talk.
Eventually you have to stand in a room in front of that general and defend your logic verbally. And that introduces a whole new set of physiological fail points.
The delivery formats are categorized strictly by preparation time. Impromptu speaking occurs with zero notice.
It requires immense self-confidence and absolute subject mastery, as you have no safety net.
Prepared speaking, or briefing, involves thorough outlining and practice, though the exact words remain spontaneous to sound natural and engaged.
Manuscript delivery requires reading a fully written script verbatim.
The doctrine aggressively warns against manuscript delivery. It notes that speakers who read from a script tend to lose eye contact, lack spontaneity, and subconsciously hide behind the lectern as a physical shield,
thereby entirely losing the audience's attention and trust.
The types of speaking are categorized by their ultimate objective. The briefing is designed to inform, direct, or persuade.
Its defining, non-negotiable characteristic is brevity. Accuracy and clarity are required in all speech, but a briefing must be brutally concise.
Crucially, the doctrine states that if a briefer cannot answer a question posed by leadership, they must never attempt an off-the-cuff guessed answer to save face.
They must immediately defer, research, and follow up. Guessing destroys credibility.
The teaching lecture is designed to instruct either formally with no audience interaction or informally with structured verbal crosstalk.
The formal speech is designed to inform, persuade, or entertain, such as an orientation talk for new recruits, a recruiting pitch to the public, or a speech at a formal dining-out event.
The manual provides a clinical, almost robotic set of rules for the physical mechanics of spoken delivery. Rate of speech is critical.
The text notes that humans can listen and process information 4 to 5 times faster than the normal spoken rate of 120 words a minute.
Therefore, speaking too slowly physically exhausts and frustrates the audience.
Volume is also weaponized. Dropping your volume to a softer level is often far more effective for demanding attention and emphasizing a point than shouting.
Pitch is managed carefully. Use a downward inflection to project certainty and command, and an upward inflection only for genuine uncertainty.
Pauses are highly structured. Short pauses divide minor points, long pauses divide major ideas, and the pause for effect requires a full, uncomfortable 3-second hold to force the audience to reflect on the previous statement.
Articulation is expressing words distinctly. Pronunciation is saying them correctly.
The text bluntly warns that a single mispronunciation will unfairly, but inevitably, damage the credibility of the entire message.
The audience will subconsciously assume that if you cannot pronounce the terminology, you do not understand the strategy.
Furthermore, the doctrine outlines basic communication tips that must be adhered to regardless of rank. Rank differences obviously exist, but communication must remain candid, direct, and respectful.
Jargon should be used incredibly carefully. It is always the speaker's responsibility to ensure audience comprehension, not the audience's job to decipher the speaker.
Tone in written communication is highlighted as exceptionally dangerous. The doctrine explicitly forbids the use of emojis or emoticons in any formal written communication.
Courtesy is mandatory. You must forego anger and sarcasm entirely. If a leader is agitated, the manual literally instructs the airman to push back their chair, step away from the computer, count to 10, and review the message before sending.
Emotional communication is inefficient communication.
But the absolute most fascinating aspect of the spoken communication section is its clinical taxonomy of stage fight behaviors.
The military has literally cataloged the nonverbal quirks that betray a speaker's internal anxiety to the audience.
It is brilliant because it forces the speaker to become hyper-aware of their physical body. The first is the life raft.
This is the speaker who grips the edges of the podium as if their life depends on it. Their knuckles are white, they refuse to step away, and they use the physical structure as a barrier against the audience.
Then there's awkward hands. This is that horrible internal sensation you get where resting your arms naturally by your sides suddenly feels completely bizarre, even though it looks perfectly normal to the audience.
So the speaker starts touching their face, adjusting their collar, or putting their hands in and out of their pockets.
The caged tiger is the speaker pacing relentlessly side to side across the stage without purpose.
They think they look dynamic, but they are actually visually exhausting the audience and projecting nervous energy.
Similar to this is the rocker, the individual planted in one spot but constantly swaying on their heels or shifting weight side to side.
And finally, the quirk known as too cool. This is the speaker who overcompensates for their sheer terror by attempting to appear excessively relaxed.
They lean heavily on one leg, they slouch against the screen, they might even put a thumb in their pocket.
It results in a posture that reads to the audience as completely unengaged or arrogant.
Which of these nonverbal quirks do you think is clinically the most dangerous to a leader's credibility when giving a high-stakes briefing?
I would think the life raft, right?
Yeah.
Because it makes you look terrified and weak.
Actually, it is the too cool overcompensation. A caged tiger or a life raft clearly betrays anxiety. And surprisingly, an audience will often forgive anxiety out of sheer human empathy.
They know public speaking is hard.
But the too cool quirk projects apathy. It signals to the audience that the speaker does not value the material, does not care about the mission, or does not respect the audience's time.
It destroys the Air Force core value of service before self, visually. Apathy is unforgivable in leadership.
Communication is a two-way interface, though. You cannot just project, you must receive. The doctrine dissects effective listening with the same clinical microscopic precision it applies to speaking.
Hearing is simply a physiological event, sound waves hitting the eardrum. Listening involves processing, evaluating, and structurally remembering the message.
The Air Force divides listening into 3 specific operational modes.
The first is informative listening. This is utilized when the primary goal is exact, perfect comprehension of data.
The text suggests a mental hack. You must listen as if you are going to be required to teach the material to someone else immediately afterward.
This forces you to take notes, identify gaps in your understanding, and ask highly clarifying questions.
The second is critical listening. This is utilized when you are evaluating a subordinate's capabilities or seeking input for a complex decision.
You are deeply analyzing the intellectual content and the logical structure of the message. The manual instructs you to listen, as if you have to grade the material for accuracy and bias.
Finally, empathic listening is deployed when the emotional state of the speaker or the integrity of the relationship itself is the operational priority.
You are not listening for facts. You are listening for feeling. It is absolutely essential for mentoring a struggling subordinate, counseling an airman through a crisis, and interacting with family members after a deployment.
We have arrived at the perimeter. We have covered internal accountability, the physiology of willpower, strategic messaging, precise writing, and flawless speaking.
All of these sections 15A through 15E were designated as Level B requirements on the ADTC for a technical sergeant.
The Air Force expects them to deeply understand and explain these frameworks. But now, we cross the threshold into Section 15F, electronic messaging.
According to the ADTC, this is the single Level C requirement in this entire chapter. This is the mandate to apply.
This is where theoretical doctrine collides with the global real-world network.
Electronic messaging is the exact intersection of written permanence and instantaneous speed. It completely bypasses the traditional, deliberate delays of physical staff routing like the SSS.
Because of this velocity, the threshold for a catastrophic error is incredibly low.
A technical sergeant must execute the rules of email etiquette flawlessly. The system does not care about your intentions. It only cares about your execution.
The doctrine provides 6 non-negotiable rules for electronic communication. Let's look at Rule 1. Be clear and concise.
Ambiguous subject lines are explicitly forbidden. The most important information must lead the text, not be buried in the third paragraph.
Even the aesthetics are regulated. Readable fonts, size 12 or larger, are mandated.
Rule 2. Watch your tone. Without the nonverbal cues of face-to-face communication, electronic text is almost always perceived more harshly than intended.
Sarcasm and irony are dangerous and forbidden. Writing in all SAPS is the digital equivalent of screaming and is considered a severe breach of professional courtesy.
And naturally, harassing or offensive material is strictly prohibited.
Rule 3 is where the stakes elevate dramatically. Be selective about what message you send. This is the OPSE tripwire.
You absolutely do not discuss sensitive, classified, or controlled unclassified information that requires special handling on unsecured networks.
The text explicitly warns about a concept called aggregation.
Even if individual emails only contain unclassified, seemingly harmless information, aggregating those unclassified pieces can create a massive, highly classified security vulnerability if intercepted and analyzed by an adversary.
Rule 4. Be selective about who gets your message. The reply all function is treated almost like a loaded weapon. It must be used sparingly.
You must meticulously double-check the recipient address before sending, especially in the massive global DoD directory where multiple individuals share identical or similar names.
Sending operational data to the wrong John Smith is a critical failure.
Rule 5. Check your attachments. Sending a follow-up email simply because you forgot an attachment is an inefficiency the system despises. It clutters the network.
Furthermore, all quotes and sources within those attachments must be cited perfectly according to federal copyright laws.
Rule 6. Keep your email under control. This is about physical security. Lock your workstation the second you step away. Delete temporary files daily.
Utilize rigorously organized directories and acknowledge receipt of sensitive messages with a prompt courtesy reply so the sender knows the data transfer was successful.
These rules govern the human etiquette, but the technical infrastructure requires even greater, more rigid compliance.
Government communication systems are subject to constant monitoring, automated interception, and search.
And Airman's electronic messages are subject to the Freedom of Information Act and federal litigation.
To secure this massive network, the Air Force utilizes identity management through public key infrastructure, or PKI, and common access cards.
This allows for the unbreakable digital signature authentication of the sender and the military-grade encryption of the message in transit.
The Defense Message System is the core application for DoD users. When transmitting data across the system, an airman must flawlessly navigate the Privacy Act of 1974.
If sending sensitive personal information, the email text must begin with the exact verbatim phrase. This email contains controlled, unclassified information which must be protected under the Privacy Act and AFI 3D3-332.
Furthermore, the subject line must begin with the specific tag, controlled, unclassified information.
The doctrine warns against indiscriminately applying this tag to every email just to be safe. It must be applied with clinical precision only when warranted.
The broader internet usage policies represent a literal minefield of potential disciplinary action.
Government hardware is for official use and highly limited authorized personal use. The manual lists a staggering array of explicitly prohibited activities.
Unauthorized personal use that degrades network performance, chain letters, soliciting for outside business.
Sending pornography or sexually explicit material, hate speech, gambling, researching illegal weapons, extremist or terrorist activities.
Processing classified information on unapproved, lower-tier systems. Copyright violations. Using another person's digital identity.
Modifying network configurations without written permission from the administrator. Downloading freeware or shareware without explicit accrediting authority approval.
They also mandate malicious logic protection. Any approved removable media device, like a thumb drive, must be actively scanned for viruses both before and after use.
Any system abnormality antivirus errors, sudden file size increases, strange application activity cannot be ignored. It must be reported immediately to the Organizational Information Assurance Officer.
Finally, even when accessing the internet in a purely personal capacity on their own phone, the airman is still bound by Regulation AFI 10701, Operations Security, and must never represent the official position of the Department of Defense.
Let us present a scenario that crystallizes exactly why Section 15F is the only Level C requirement on the ADTC for a technical sergeant.
Imagine a highly motivated, dedicated technical sergeant. They want to perfectly embody the Air Force core value of excellence in all we do.
They have a massive backlog of unclassified administrative work, and they do not want to fall behind.
So they auto-forward their military email to their personal commercial internet service provider account, like a Gmail or Yahoo account, so they can work from home over the weekend.
Their intention is flawless. They want to work harder. They want to serve the mission.
But their execution is a catastrophic violation. The doctrine explicitly states, do not auto-forward electronic messages from the .mil domain to a commercial internet service provider.
The technical sergeant's good intentions are completely irrelevant to the system.
By applying Level B understanding, valuing the theory of hard work and accountability, but failing to apply Level C execution, perfectly adhering to network security protocols, they have committed a severe security breach.
The information has left the encrypted military perimeter. The consequences for this failure could range from a permanent loss of their security clearance to a formal court-martial.
This is precisely why the ADTC draws a hard, unforgiving line. Execution is the absolute only metric that matters in a digital environment.
We have tracked the architecture of an airman from the deepest internal struggles against the fixed mindset, through the physiological and biological management of willpower, into the rigidly structured frameworks of written and spoken communication,
culminating in the high-wire, high-stakes act of global electronic messaging. The text reveals an organization that leaves absolutely nothing to chance.
They do not hope for good leadership. They engineer it through a brutal sequence of cognitive demands, scaling from basic memory up to real-world, flawless application.
Which leaves you, the listener, with a final, clinical question. The Air Force breaks down massive abstract concepts like personal resilience, moral courage, and interpersonal communication into scientific, quantifiable, and testable procedures.
If one of the largest, most complex, and highest-stakes military organizations in human history can systemize human psychology to build elite leaders, what is preventing you from auditing your own operational framework?
Have you identified your own Level C competencies, the specific critical areas in your career where theoretical understanding is useless without flawless execution?
And if you haven't identified them yet, are you prepared for the clinical consequences when the system inevitably tests your application?